are many differences between Quebec and Norway, but let me try and maybe suggest one or two interesting similarities as well. We're talking about two relatively small nations whose history has been influenced by big neighbors, by colonial domination. Norway only became independent from Sweden in the first decade of the last century, and before that was controlled by Denmark as well. But also, there's a deeper history there of Aboriginal people in both countries. And I think continuing issues probably still to be resolved as they come out in both countries. And another legacy, I guess, of that history are two languages. Yes, Norway has two languages. It's not as big an issue as it is here in Quebec, but there are two official languages, and in parts of Norway it is a very important issue and does have an impact on contemporary diversity policy. There is some sense of cultural exceptionalism as well, of a patriotism, of a generally benign patriotism, but also a strong sense of self that has grown up, I guess, over centuries of adversity and remains a powerful force to this day. We might also say that, bringing it right forward to the last decade, that we have in Quebec and Norway two regions which have not been hit so as badly, as hard by the economic crash, by the austerity, as other parts of North America, other parts of Europe. And that again, I think, has some impact on the story that we're going to hear. Now, the other thing to point out is two big cities within two small nations. Montreal in Quebec, Oslo in Norway are the economic drivers of their regions, of their nations, and have been the diversity drivers too. And this will be a very important factor that you'll hear. Now let's try and bring you up to date now and think about Norway in the 1970s, which is when Norway first started accepting migrants, labour migrants at that time. I think what you had at that time was a mentality in Norway that we're still a young nation, we're still showing the world who we are. We're a special nation. No sense of being better than anybody else, but somehow we're a bit different, and that's where we'll probably always be. And that impacted on the sense that migration was never expected to have any impact on the country. The labourers would come, they'd do their job, and they'd leave, the classic guest worker model. And really, I'd dub this an age of unreality. At the same time, the Norwegians were not insular people. They loved getting out there. They loved being the good guys, the nice guys, the peacemakers, the Oslo hosts, the Nobel Peace Prize. You know, great politicians like Brundtland, as we know, has become figures on the world stage, spreading a message of peace. Norwegians have created an identity for themselves in the world of being great interculturalists. And yet, at home, it almost seemed like there was a blind spot. There was still a sense that we're a uniform nation, always have been, always will be. That's why I call it an age of unreality, an age of innocence. The age of innocence came to an end on the 22nd of July 2011, when a man called Anders Breivik started shooting people on Utøya Island. But I think the age of unreality ended before that, when particularly the city of Oslo really woke up in the 1990s and said, the labourers, the migrants are not going away. They are here to stay. We must accept that this is going to be a multi-ethnic city,